You're watching Northern Crimes.
July 7th, 2012. What should be a peaceful weekend getaway into the Alaskan wilderness instead becomes the start of one of Alaska's most haunting unsolved disappearances. Valerie Sifsof, a 43-year-old woman with deep ties to the state's fishing communities, vanishes from Granite Creek Campground without a trace. What follows is an agonizing search that stretches across months in a mystery that still lingers more than a decade later. What happens after midnight that night when Valerie walks away from her campsite? Is it the forest, the water, or something else entirely? I've spent many nights in those same woods. I've walked the game trails, swam in the glacier-fed creek, and I've seen things out there that I still can't explain. This is the true story of Valerie Sifsof, one of Alaska's most haunting disappearances, and this is Northern Crimes. Granite Creek Campground sits tucked in the heart of Alaska's Chugach National Forest at mile 64 of the Seward Highway. It's remote but accessible, a place where locals and travelers alike go to disconnect. Towering spruce and hemlock trees surround the campground, and the sound of birds, rushing water, and mountain wind fills the air, drowning out the rest of the world. For Valerie Sifsof, this setting was more than a retreat. It was a return to something familiar. Born in November 1968, Valerie had deep roots in Alaska. Her family was part of the fishing culture that shaped life around Bristol Bay. Her father, Victor, was a longtime fisherman, and their boat, the Valtrina, was named in part after her. Valerie grew up immersed in the rhythms of the sea and the seasons. She spent summers working on boats and at Ekuk Beach, helping her family with their fishing business. She even served as a page in the Alaska legislature and took art classes that reflected her creative spirit and cultural heritage. By 2012, Valerie had returned to Anchorage after spending time in Seattle. She was living with her longtime boyfriend and navigating a period of personal change. Friends and family described her as vibrant, affectionate, and caring. She enjoyed browsing bookstores, spending time with younger relatives, and staying connected to her community. That July weekend, Valerie and her boyfriend planned a simple trip, just a quiet weekend of camping near the water. Granite Creek was the perfect spot, close to Anchorage, but far enough into the wilderness to feel like an escape. So, I've made this drive many times. The highway curves along Turnagain Arm, winds through mountains, and skirts steep drop-offs. Civilization fades quickly. It's beautiful, yes, but the deeper you go, the easier it is to forget just how far out there you are. In fact, on a recent camping trip of my own to Granite Creek, I decided to explore further than usual, beyond the campsites, deeper into the forest. I followed faint game trails, and I stumbled onto something very strange, a crude survival shelter tucked far away from any trail. Built from logs and debris, it was clearly human-made, but abandoned. It felt unsettling, like something that wasn't meant to be found. And standing there alone in the silence, I was reminded that these forests are vast and wild, and that anything can happen out here. It's weird, man. It's honestly like super creepy back here. I mean, in addition to this being absolute total bear country, It doesn't take long behind this campground where you just kind of, I don't know, man. If you weren't good with direction, you could get turned around real quick. And I don't know. I also think about Valerie Sifsof, who disappeared in this campground a bunch of years ago. I think about her every time I come here, and I don't know, man, just seeing this little shelter here just freaked me out. Whoever was out here dropped trees with what looks like an axe. Some other trees dropped here. I mean, it's like, was somebody like squatting here? Or like, did somebody build this for fun? I mean, this is like a pretty serious shelter. Like, these are, I mean, this is like a real shelter, like a real wilderness shelter. And they're right by a water source. And it's honestly totally hidden from the campground. It's probably 150 yards back in the woods, which 150 yards is actually, you know, it's quite a distance, really. Let's look through here a little bit more. A little bit of a trail. A tree that got cut. But then the trail just kind of disappears. I mean, there's not really a trail. It just kind of disappears. I'm gonna go walk over to this creek and see what I can see. I don't know, maybe I'll cross this thing tomorrow morning if the weather's good and see if I can find more of a trail here that heads over to the main river. I'm gonna get in this thing and see if there's anything in there. Doesn't look like it. This is creepy, man. Well, I'm not gonna hang out here too much longer. All right, back to the campground. If I can find it. Okay, here's the trail that I had blazed through earlier. Okay, there's my campsite. That night, campground was quiet. As I sat by the fire, I couldn't stop thinking about Valerie, or the creepy shelter I'd stumbled on earlier. I tried to clear my mind. I set up my tent. I listened to some podcasts, but every noise I heard made me think something was out there. Finally, around 2 a.m, I settled in and tried to get some sleep. Back in 2012, Valerie was camped out not far from where I was. Like me, she was just trying to enjoy a weekend away. According to her boyfriend, they'd settled in for the night, but sometime around midnight, everything changed. The only real account of what happened that night comes from Valerie's boyfriend. He told investigators that they'd gotten into an argument and that Valerie walked off into the night. This was something he said wasn't unusual in their relationship. They often gave each other space after disagreements, but this time, Valerie didn't come back. She left behind her keys, her ID, her phone, everything. Days passed with no sign of her, and it wasn't until July 11th, 4 full days later, that she was reported missing to the Alaska State Troopers. The delay raised questions. Why wait 4 days to report someone missing in such remote terrain? Her boyfriend claimed they often gave each other space, but 4 days in the Alaskan wilderness seemed dangerously long. Later, it would come out that he thought she had gotten back to Anchorage somehow and just chose not to contact him. But unfortunately, he was wrong. The details in the report were chilling. Valerie was last seen wearing a black sweatshirt-style jacket, blue sweatpants, and black boots. She stood 5'5" and weighed around 120 pounds. She'd vanished into some of the roughest terrain in the state. The search effort that followed was enormous. Valerie's father, Victor, was fishing in Bristol Bay when he first got the call. He flew back to Anchorage immediately and rushed to the campground. He would spend the next several months consumed by the search for his daughter. Family, friends, troopers, military personnel, and volunteers all joined in. They covered every inch of the surrounding forest on foot, scoured the riverbanks, and sent helicopters overhead. Boats searched nearby waters, including the 6 Mile River. Search dogs traced scent trails that led nowhere. The terrain worked against them at every turn. Granite Creek is swift and cold, fed by melting snow and heavy summer rains. The forest around it is a maze of dense alders, trees, steep ravines, game trails, and old logging roads. At night, it's nearly impossible to navigate without light, or at least a sense of direction. And out there, believe me, it's easy to get turned around. Despite the best efforts of everyone involved, no trace of Valerie was found during those first critical weeks. And then the weather turned. A brutal storm swept through the region, dumping 9 inches of rain, even some snow. The search had to be suspended. But the family never stopped. They organized their own searches, they posted flyers, and launched a blog to keep Valerie's name in the public eye. They knew the odds were shrinking, but they refused to let the trail go cold. Then, a few months later, something finally surfaced. In the fall of 2012, clothing matching what Valerie had been wearing was found near 6 Mile Creek. A green shirt, a black DKNY hoodie, items her family immediately recognized. It was a devastating discovery. For those who understood the currents and the river system in Alaska, the meaning was clear. If Valerie had fallen into the creek, the water could have carried her clothing far from the point of entry, while her body remained hidden. That discovery reignited the search, but also raised new questions. If she'd fallen into the creek, how did she get to that location? Had she wandered farther than anyone thought? Or was she somewhere else entirely before ending up near the water? As time went on, the mystery of what happened to Valerie only grew. The clothing was the only real evidence ever recovered. No body, no witness sightings, no phone signals, nothing. The family kept searching. They followed tips. They brought in psychics. They used their blog to collect and track every lead. They reached out to the media. Valerie's niece, an Olympic snowboarder, used her platform to keep the case in the public eye. But nothing else surfaced, just a quiet, eerie stillness. When I explored the forest around Granite Creek just a few weeks ago, I thought about how that stillness must have felt to Valerie's family. The endless trees, the cold water, the hidden places that no one ever finds unless they know exactly where to look. The survival shelter I discovered, it really creeped me out. Not because I think it necessarily has anything to do with Valerie's case. but because it reminded me that people have been out here, living and moving through this forest in ways most of us never see. And if someone wanted to hide something or someone, this is definitely the place to do it. In 2016, 4 years after Valerie vanished, the courts granted a presumptive death certificate. Her father accepted the legal reality, but not the emotional one. There were still too many unanswered questions, still too much unfinished. And even after that, the family kept looking. They spoke out on missing persons issues. They connected with other families in similar situations. And in Alaska, there's a lot of those situations. They refused to let Valerie become just another statistic. One prevailing theory is that Valerie likely slipped into the creek and drowned. It's the simplest explanation. The water is fast, cold, and dangerous. But even her father, who believed this explanation was the most likely, couldn't stop hoping for more answers. Because if it was that simple, why haven't they found her? More than a decade has passed since Valerie Sifsof vanished. The campground remains open. Families still visit. Campfires still crackle. But for those who know what happened here, the place feels different. It certainly does for me. Valerie's story lives on in flyers, in blog posts, and in the memories of those who loved her. Her father must think of her every day. Her family still drives that highway, scanning the trees, wondering if maybe, just maybe, something will finally appear. The Valerie they remember was joyful and bright. She loved art, family gatherings, and the deep traditions of her culture. She had plans, hopes, people who loved her. Her family has shared those memories so that she's not defined by her disappearance, but by the life she lived before it. Alaska has one of the highest rates of missing persons in the U.S. Its landscape is breathtaking, but it's also brutal, remote, unforgiving. And for those trying to find answers, it often feels like the land itself is working against them. Even now, her case remains open. Alaska State Troopers still welcome tips. The family still offers a reward for any information that might lead to answers. They're not seeking revenge, they just want to know what happened. A few weeks ago, when I stood again by the creek, listening to the endless flow of water, I thought about how quickly someone could vanish here. One misstep, one turn off the trail, and then nothing but trees, time, and the elements. Or maybe it wasn't an accident. That question, the one that no one can answer, is what makes this case so haunting. Valerie didn't plan to vanish. She had people to see, things to do, a life she was still building. She deserved more than to disappear without a trace. Somewhere out there, the final piece of her story is waiting. And until it's found, her family is going to keep searching. Her story will keep echoing through the forest, and her name won't be forgotten. If you have any information about the disappearance of Valerie Sifsof, please contact Alaska State Troopers at 907-262-4453 or the Alaska Bureau of Investigation Missing Persons Clearinghouse at 907-269-5038. Reference incident number AK122-19013. This video was for Valerie and for every family still waiting.